The Resort. Written by Anna Ashley. Narrated by Nick Hudson. Chapter 1. Jake. Shit, I said between gritted teeth. I ran my hands through my hair, making another mental note to have it cut soon. This was the third time in a week I'd left cleaning supplies in one of the rooms. And not just any room. The room. The double shift, just like this summer, had been too long, and I was feeling hot, bothered, and horny. Most of the time, I saw the no fraternization policy as a godsend. I wanted to finish my MA in business management and come back to the resort to a job that matched my skill set. Hooking up with other staff was a bad idea, especially for me. I'd seen good people lose their jobs and their hearts because they'd hooked up with a colleague. Let's not even go there with guests. Not worth it. That's why, with only a week to go before I was back to college on the other side of the country, I was sporting the biggest case of blue balls / guest crush combo ever, and counting down the days to the end of the season. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I took it out discreetly and saw a message from my college roommate. The supply closet was nearby, and the corridor was empty, so I pushed my cleaning cart inside and closed the door behind me before dialing his number. He answered on the first ring. Jake, I need to get laid. My mom is driving me nuts, and I swear if I'm told once again how so-and-so have a lovely single daughter, I might just rip off my own balls and feed them to the neighbor's dickhead cat. Tragic. And why do I want to hear this? I said, trying to show disinterest, but knowing already where the conversation was headed. Because, without my balls, what are you going to suck on before I shove my dick up your tight ass while you scream my name? I guess you'd better hold on to your balls. It's only another week, Zach, I said. Hey, is everything okay? He asked. Yeah, why? Don't know. You sound, distant? No, just tired. I'm ending a double shift, and now I have to sneak back into a guest room to rescue something I left behind. Damn. I don't know how you do it, Jake. Have you actually had a break since the end of term? Yeah, of course I did. I'm right on the beach, remember? I heard him sigh on the other side of the phone. Well then, use your beach and relax some. Because in 7 days, I'm going to unleash my pent-up sexual frustration on you. Can't wait, I said, before ending the call. I put the phone back in my pocket and started replenishing the cart for the next cleaner. No one expected me to do it, but I respected my colleagues enough to leave them with a cart ready to use at the start of their shift. Fuck. The Lysol. I looked inside all the cupboards but couldn't find a new can. Then I saw a note on the notice board asking staff to use Lysol sparingly because it was missing on the last delivery. Just like the 2 mornings before, I was going to need to return to the room. Shit. As I put the key card in the door, after knocking and getting no response, I wondered if I'd be as successful today as I'd been previously. The room was still as tidy as I'd left it, not surprisingly since I'd cleaned it only 20 minutes ago, and the guests hadn't come back from breakfast. With a single look, the sexy, blue-eyed bear that had picked up the keys when he'd checked in had all but invited me to join him and his equally gorgeous but brown-eyed younger husband for some under-the-sheets fun. What was I thinking? If I ever dared to hook up with them, there would be no sheets, just some hard, sweaty fun. What was I thinking? If I ever dared to hook up with them, there would be no sheets, just some hard, sweaty fun. Great. And now I was hard. Just as I'd been for the entire time I'd cleaned their room earlier. I hadn't resisted smelling the aftershave I'd seen in the bathroom. But it wasn't that scent that was driving me crazy. It was something else. Maybe it was the combination of both men, the aftershave, and the dirty thoughts that wouldn't leave my mind. Hooking up with guests wasn't allowed, I reminded myself. If God knew the restraint it took to clean up after the two men without adding my own mess to it first, she'd definitely save me a spot in heaven. Think of the consequences if this was to get out. Not worth it. I froze as I heard the playful laughs at the same time as the room door opened all the way, because I hadn't intended on getting lost in my thoughts when I'd come in to rescue the Lysol. Deep blue eyes locked with mine before roaming south. I was held in place by his gaze, powerless to react, as the magnetic power of those blues owned me, like my body wasn't mine anymore. The brown-eyed guy sidled up to his husband, who put his arm around him without looking away from me. He whispered something I couldn't hear, and the blue-eyed bear smiled a slow, hungry smile. I swallowed, gripping the can of Lysol harder in my hand. The younger man, who looked to be around my age, walked the short length of the room toward me. He was my height, too, which made it easier to look straight into his eyes, as hard as it was to look away from the bigger guy. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice soft but confident, as he gently placed a hand on my chest. "Jake," I said. "Nice to meet you, Jake." I would have laughed at the polite greeting if his other hand hadn't pressed against the hardness in my work trousers. He definitely wasn't shy about touching another man in front of his husband. I swallowed and closed my eyes when he'd touched me to stop from spontaneously combusting. Not that it mattered, because if I was caught in the room with guests, I'd definitely get my ass fired. The deep voice I'd met before spoke. "Jake, I'm Mal, and the man attached to your groin is my husband, Griff." If I had any doubts that it was possible to orgasm from someone's voice alone, I was getting pretty close to proving that theory right. I opened my eyes and choked out a laugh. I already knew their names. I knew everything I could about them. I'd checked them in. I'd cleaned their room daily, trying not to build a picture of who they were based on the stuff they'd left out in the open in their room. It hadn't worked. The reality of the two men in front of me was so much better than my imagination. Fuck, I growled as Griff pulled the zipper down. I held on to the chest of drawers behind me with one hand, while holding the fucking can of Lysol with the other. My body was like a coil, ready to spring at the lightest touch, and I couldn't resist pressing closer to Griff's hand. He let out a soft giggle. "Baby," he said, looking behind at his husband. "Looks like we're going to use those after all." He picked up a box of Trojan Magnum XL condoms and threw it on the bed. I'd wondered about those every day I'd come in to clean the room. Why would they need condoms? And which one required the XL size? Mal locked the door behind him and stalked toward me to claim my mouth. How could a kiss be hard, soft, commanding, and reverent all at the same time? I opened up for him, my body feeling like it would break in two, the bottom part begging for Griff's hand, and the top part yielding to Mal's mouth. Tell us you want this," he said, before he sucked on my bottom lip like it was candy. "Yes," I said, sucking in a breath. Both of us. Both of us. Yes. I wrapped my arms around him. He picked me up as if I was light as a feather and dropped me on the bed, claiming my mouth with a desperation I hadn't felt from a lover in a long time. The bed dipped on one side, and Mal turned us so Griff could come closer. Behind me, Griff sucked on the skin of my neck while stretching out his arm over me to touch Mal. Strong hands groped my ass and pulled me closer. My erection pressed against Mal's. Yeah, he was definitely extra large. Turn over, Griff said. As hard as it was to give up Mal's lips, I was eager to taste Griff. So I did as I was told. When my eyes met his, my heart skipped a beat, and once again my body was torn in two. I was burning red hot as Mal reached out for the button of my trousers and pulled them down to my knees. But I was also hypnotized by the pure innocence of Griff's eyes. It was like he'd been born to care about everything. Care for his husband, care for me. I need you to know I never do this, I said, my gut telling me I needed to say the words, especially for Griff. I've never done it before. Mal's hands stopped where they were resting on my stomach as he took his turn sucking on the skin behind my neck. I was now thankful I hadn't had time to have that haircut after all. You've never... he trailed. Oh, no, I have... I blurted, looking behind me at him, and then turning to Griff. I've had sex. I mean, I'm 29. I've never done it with guests. Or with two guys at the same time. Suddenly, there was a bridge of communication passing over my head. My stomach sunk as I realized they were going to give me an out. I thought back to my call with Zach. We'd been friends since we'd become roommates after I'd answered his ad on the college notice board. We'd been fucking just as long. With Zach and I, there were no feelings, no mess. It was easy. We knew as soon as we graduated we'd both be going our separate ways, and one day, 20 years from now, when we met up, we'd be complaining about our spouses and reminiscing about the hot sex we'd had in college. That was our agreement, and it was still valid. I liked it because it was clean, easy. No, I said, louder than I expected. I don't want clean. I don't want easy. I don't want to go. Please. I want to feel. I looked into Griff's eyes as I pleaded. He caressed my face gently, and then his hand moved round to the back of my neck to pull me in for a kiss. Griff's mouth was everything I hoped and more. Soft and sweet like cotton candy. I gasped into his mouth when I felt a cool lube and a thick finger pressing against my hole. Fuck. You look so good like this, Jake, Mal said in a thick, deep voice. I wanted to reach behind to feel his erection, but Griff picked that moment to guide my hand toward his jeans. His kiss became more insistent as I popped the buttons and took his cock into my hand. Okay, so they were both extra large. Take us both, Jake, Griff said, barely letting go of my mouth. I cried out a curse when the velvety soft skin of Griff's cock rubbed against mine. I gripped us harder and pushed into him. Lift your leg over his, Jake. This was what I wanted. No thinking required. Mal said, so I did. So simple. So good. In this position, I was able to both hold more of my cock and Griff's together, and also open up for Mal, which I realized was his intention when I felt a lubed finger push its way inside. Fuck! I shouted. Mal's gentle hand on my back, at the same time as he kept adding more fingers and stretching me, was like being spanked and then caressed to take away the sting. Hard and soft at the same time. Griff let go of my lips long enough for me to look behind and see Mal guide his thick cock inside me. His eyes met mine when there was a little resistance. That blue ocean I was swimming in was destined to never be stormy. He too was born to look after others. The position made it hard to kiss him. I tried to move, which was when I realized my trousers were still halfway down my legs and my shirt was pulled up. We were all still dressed, which in a perverted way felt dirtier than if we'd all been naked. Clothing implied the rushed need to get to that beautiful release, the one I hadn't had in weeks other than at my own hand. You look so beautiful, Jake. Oh, that's it. Take all of him. Mal is going to make you feel so good. We both are. I nodded, powerless to do anything else but feel as both men took charge of my body. Griff moved down the bed and took my cock in his mouth as Mal sped up his pace in and out of me. He wrapped his arms around my waist and then moved so he was hitting my prostate with every thrust. "Ooh, I'm so close," I said. I shut my eyes so tight, as if that would stop me from coming too soon. "Baby, I want to come inside you." I thought for a moment Mal was speaking to me, but then I felt Griff nodding, and when I looked down, I saw him place his hand back on the bed. His eyes were so dark and lustful, needy and warm. Griff was like walking through a door to shelter from the wind. I thought I wanted red, hot, sexy, dirty, but it was the way he looked at me that made the tingle I felt in my spine spread out to the rest of my body, which triggered my orgasm. Mal held me through it as I spilled into Griff's mouth, and then through the aftershocks when I was positive I'd died and gone to heaven. He kept running his hands over my sensitive skin while pulling out of me gently. As Mal removed the condom, I noticed he hadn't come. I was about to make a move when Griff all but jumped into Mal's lap and attacked him like he hadn't touched his husband in years. Suddenly, I felt very much like that spare screw you always end up with after assembling flat-packed furniture. The couple didn't notice as I pulled my trousers up and walked toward the door. "Jake?" Griff called. I looked at them. So beautiful in each other's arms. And something in my chest felt so tight I had to bring my hand up to rub the spot in the middle of my ribs. There was a look of uncertainty in Mal's eyes, and I thought I saw something that looked a lot like sadness in Griff's. I didn't stay long enough to find out. The cleaning cart was still in the supply closet, and I hadn't clocked out of my shift. What I'd done was break all the rules, the resort's and my own. And after all that, I still forgot the can of Lysol in the room. The taste of Griff's sweet tongue lingered in my mouth, and my ass stung deliciously. But there was no time to dwell on that, because there was only one thing I could do. It was time to go back to college. Hopefully, by the time Zach arrived in a week, I'd be over whatever had just happened.